Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'll be sharing the cards I made using Paper Rose Studio's Birds of a Feather 6x6 paper collection. There are 18 double-sided pattern papers, 3 each of 12 designs. There are several sheets that have cut-apart images and sentiments. Lots and lots of feathers, there's some birds, flowers. This sheet has those larger sentiment cut-apart images. And if you don't want to do any fussy cutting, you can always simply use the other side. For my cards, I will be using 1 each of all of the different cut-apart sheets. I was really drawn to this collection by the beautiful colors. It's very unique. There's also a really fun variety of different designs. From stripes, there's wood grains, a couple of the patterns have a bunch of sentiments in the background. And I think this collection is perfect for masculine or feminine cards. Paper Rose Studio sells a huge variety of fun stamps and dies, but I decided for this video to really focus on just that pattern paper. I'd love to say I didn't use a single die, but I almost didn't. There's just one card where I used a die, and that's this first card design. For several of the cards, I will be using sketches for inspiration. This first one is from Freshly Made Sketches. It's number 306. And if you are interested in any of the sketches I use in this video, I do share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. That link is provided in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. For this first card, I selected pattern paper for the background that has a bunch of sentiments on it. All very positive sentiments. Hope is the feather that reminds us we have wings, spread your wings and fly, and quite a few more. The other pattern paper I'm featuring on the card has this beautiful intricate circle design. I used the same sheet for that narrow strip on the left and then the wider strip on the right, layering everything on some dark brown cardstock. Then I'll be adding one of the sentiment cut-aparts. This is "A heart without dreams is like a bird without feathers." On the very left side of that cut-apart, I did add some scrap cardstock just to keep it level with the rest of the card. And here is where I'm bringing in one of the die cuts, or the only die cut I use in this video. Just a small circle, and this is the center from the Alana flower die set. I cut out 3 of them using that same dark brown cardstock and just adhere those in place in the upper right hand corner. I don't always show it in the video, but if I do have that extra strip of pattern paper, I like to add it to the inside of the card just for a little extra detail. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 2, the card sketch is from MFT. This is number 586. I used one of Paper Rose's embossing folders on some light green cardstock. This is called Baby Blue. It adds this beautiful leafy pattern to the background. I have 2 different pattern papers, one with the little wood grain, which will go in the lower right hand corner, and then a fun sort of watercolor pattern that'll go in the upper left hand corner. Since I did emboss that background cardstock, I put a lot of ATG tape on the back before layering it on some dark green, sort of an olive color cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base, leaving the 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next, I'll add several of the cut-apart images, and I did all of the fussy cutting off screen. I have the sentiment "Happy Birthday," and I'll cut a fishtail on the left side. And I also have 2 feathers and 2 of the birds. I'll be adding the feathers on the right side of the sentiment. I'll put just a small scrap piece of cardstock on the left side of the sentiment where it goes off of that wood grain pattern paper. And on the very top of both of the feathers, I did put some foam dimension, and I'll add liquid adhesive on the lower portion. I'm placing the feathers to cover up the edge of the Happy Birthday sentiment cut apart. I'll adhere the larger feather first, then I can add the smaller feather, just overlapping them. I have two of the bird cut aparts, and I've already put foam dimension on the back side. The one bird sitting on the branch I'll adhere right above the sentiment, and the other one will be flying up in the air on the left side of the card. I also decided to add a small banner in the upper left-hand corner using that same olive green cardstock. I'll adhere it in place using some liquid adhesive. For final finishing touch, I'm using some clear crystals, and these are from Paper Rose Studio. The crystals actually come in a small bag, but I decided to add them to this small container, just easier to use. They don't have adhesive on the back, so I will need to use some liquid adhesive. Put just a small drop of glue. I'm using an embellishment wand to pick those up, then pressing them in place. So there is my finished card, and again I did make two using this design. For the second card, I did use different cut aparts, different feathers and different birds. So I also had to change the placement of the bird on the branch, otherwise it would have covered up the happy birthday sentiment. Now moving on to card design number 3. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 408. I selected two different pattern papers, a gray wood grain, and also the sheet with lots of different sentiments. Since you'll only see that tiny bit of the wood grain paper, I don't need to add a full panel. So these are about 3/4 of an inch wide. I'll glue those down first on some black cardstock. And then before adhering my sentiment pattern paper, I did put a scrap piece of cardstock in that opening gap, just to keep everything nice and level. Now I can put my card front onto a card base. For this card, I decided to have a wider cardstock background. Generally, I add 1/8 of an inch for that background layer, but for this card, I added 1/4 of an inch. On the card sketch, it has the circle with that thin banner in the background. Well, I'll be changing that up. Instead of the circle, I'm using one of the image sentiment cut aparts. I'll still add the banner in the background, but I did cut this one just a little bit wider, and I also decided to put the fishtail just on the right side. Before adhering my cut apart image, I am putting some scrap cardstock above and below where it'll go over that banner. Then I'll finish off the card by adding some black enamel dots. The clear crystals didn't have enough contrast. So there is my finished card, and again I did make two using this design. By not using all the stamps and dies, the cards come together really quickly. And Paper Rose has so many fun collections that include the image and sentiment cut aparts. For card design number 4, the card sketch is from Mojo Monday. This is number 405. I selected 3 different pattern papers. I'm using this very soft peach cardstock color for the background that has a linen finish, although you'll only see just that tiny bit around the wood grain paper. On the bottom of the card, I added the striped pattern paper. Then I have that wood grain on the top, and I'm layering everything on some black cardstock. Next, I'll add this diagonal strip, and I've already layered it on some black cardstock. I do have that strip wider than the card, so I'll adhere it in place, leaving those ends off the edge. Then I can flip over my card panel and trim off the extra. That way it's perfectly flush to the edge of the card. I'll put some ATG tape on the back and adhere my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. On the card sketch, there is a circle and a little flower embellishment, but I will be changing that up. Instead, I'll be adding one of the rectangle cut aparts. I'll first layer it on some black cardstock. The sentiment is, "No bird soars too high if he soars with his own wings." And I love the beautiful feathers. Before adhering the cut apart in place, I will add some scrap cardstock on the upper and lower portion where it'll go over that diagonal strip. There are lots of layers on this card. Then I'll put liquid adhesive on the back and adhere my cut apart on the right side. Trying to get that cut apart nice and straight. In the upper left hand corner, I decided to add a small banner, and this is just something I cut out myself. It's about 7/8 of an inch wide and I think about 1/2 an inch tall. If you're not very good at cutting out your own banners, Paper Rose does sell several banner die sets, but sometimes I find it quicker to simply cut out my own. To finish off the card, I'll use some more of the clear crystals, just putting 3 of them around the image and sentiment. The crystal pack includes several different sizes, and the smallest size is super tiny, but I do like to use it on my card. So there is my finished card, and again, I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 5, I really wanted to use the pattern paper that has this large detailed circle image. I trimmed down that paper to 5 1/4 inches by 3 inches. I'll adhere it on some dark brown cardstock. Underneath that panel, I'll add pattern paper that has all the different sentiments. And to add some separation and contrast between the 2 patterns, I'm using some of the dark gray wood grain paper. And that piece is about 1/2 inch wide. I'll just flip over my panel and trim off the extra. Then I'll put some ATG tape on the back and adhere my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 inch of the white card base showing. Now I'll bring out several of the cut apart images and also one of the sentiments. I have 2 of the feathers. I put some foam dimension on the very top portion just to pop them up slightly, and I'm gluing down the bottom portion, and I'll just overlap both of those feathers. The sentiment, I've put foam dimension on the back side, and I'll adhere it on top of the feathers. Add one of the small banners in the upper left hand corner. I was really into the banners for this set of cards. Then the final finishing touch, I'll add some more of the clear crystals. I'm putting 3 of them around the feather and the sentiment, and 2 on that small banner in the upper left hand corner. With all of the different sizes of the crystals, I mostly use the 2 smallest sizes. I prefer not to have a lot of extra dimension on my card. That way if I need to mail it, I won't have to pay additional postage. And there is my finished card. This time I was able to make 4. I just used different image and sentiment cut aparts. Sometimes it can be challenging to use those full 6x6 designs, but I like to cut them in half as I did on this card, or maybe just feature part of that design. Now moving on to card design number 6. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 569. This is a great sketch to really finish off some of those paper scraps you have left over from your paper pad. And at this point in the video, all I have left are mostly small scraps. For a little bit of contrast, I decided to layer all of those pattern papers on some black cardstock. Then I'll layer that panel on some light peach cardstock that has that linen texture. Put my card front onto a card base, and I won't leave any of that white card base showing, and I'm also not adding another cardstock layer. Next I'll be adding one of the cut apart sentiments, and I've already layered that on some black cardstock. I also wanted to use some of these smaller feather cut aparts, so I decided to tuck them on the left side of that sentiment cut apart. Before adhering this thank you sentiment, I will put some scrap cardstock pieces just to keep everything nice and level. I love the variety of the different feather cut aparts, and they really weren't that hard to fussy cut out. I do leave just that very thin white border, but you could always cut them right to the edge if you prefer that look. Then I'll add liquid adhesive to the back and adhere my sentiment cut apart in place. I'll be adding another small banner, putting it in the upper right hand corner. And even though I didn't measure most of these banners, they are about the same size. It's kind of my favorite size for a small banner. So there is my finished card, and this time I was able to make a total of 5. I was really trying to use up most of these sentiment cut apart pieces. When I started this paper pad, I wasn't planning on finishing it off, but I was having so much fun. Before I knew it, I was down to just a few small scraps. Moving on to card design number 7. At this point, I really don't have a lot of pattern paper left, although I do still have this one large panel. So I decided I needed to feature that on a card. I selected some dark gray cardstock for the background, and I'll be layering all of these pieces on some black cardstock. I'll add this large panel with all the detailed circles first. I have this very thin strip of pattern paper and decided to adhere it to a wider black cardstock layer. And I also have the pattern paper with all the different sentiments. So I'll adhere that piece down next and then add that narrow strip on the left side of the card. Now so far I have quite a few layers on this card. Before I can adhere that narrow strip, I will add some scrap cardstock pieces. I'll add some longer pieces first where it goes off of the sentiment pattern paper, and then add some more small pieces on the very ends where it goes off of all those other layers. Once I have everything leveled out, I can add liquid adhesive on the back. Now if I don't add all those little cardstock layers, there will be a noticeable dent or dip on the front of the card. This may be just my crafty OCD, but I really like to have that very finished look on my cards. You could also use different thicknesses of foam dimension to level out those layers, but it's nice to be able to use up some of that scrap cardstock that would end up in the recycle bin anyway. So now I'll layer this panel on some black cardstock, adhere my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next I'll add one of the image sentiment cut-aparts. This is Thank You with this sweet little bird. And I'll pull out some more scrap cardstock to get this piece all nice and level. I need just a narrow piece on the left side and a little wider piece on the right. To make sure I'm getting those pieces nice and level, I'll lay them on my card, run my finger across them, and I can feel if I need to add more layers or maybe take away some layers. I'm using liquid adhesive to adhere those in place. I decided I need one more piece on the right side. So now I'll adhere my cut apart in place using some liquid adhesive. Since I haven't used any of the flower cut-aparts, I decided to use 3 of them on this card. I'll put 2 of them in the lower left-hand corner and 1 to the right of that little bird. I will be popping up the flowers. Now part of the flowers will be attached to that cut-apart image, so I only need to add foam dimension where it goes off of it. The rest I can adhere using liquid adhesive. I kept changing my mind on the placement of the 2 flowers in the lower left-hand corner. Then I'll also add one of the banners in the upper right-hand corner. And I didn't have a cardstock piece already cut out for this banner, so I'm just cutting it all by hand. I may not have cut it out perfectly straight, but that's okay. I think it adds a little more character to the card. I'll adhere that banner in place using some liquid adhesive. So there is my finished card, and I was only able to make one since at this point I'm almost out of pattern paper. For card design number 8, and this is my final card design, I have 4 different pattern papers and I've cut them all to 1.5 inch squares. I'll add all of those squares on some black cardstock, and that cardstock layer is 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. For the background of the card, I'm using some more of that soft peach cardstock that has the linen texture. I didn't show the card sketch in the video, but this is based off of OWH sketch number 154. It's one of my favorite sketches for finishing off a paper pad, and I've used it so many times I know the measurements by heart. If you are interested in this sketch, I will have it listed on my coordinating blog post. I'll layer this background on some black cardstock. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. I still have quite a few of the image and sentiment cut-aparts, so I wanted to use a few more of them on my last couple cards. At the very bottom of the card, I decided to add a couple strips of cardstock. I have a very thin piece in black and then a little bit wider in this olive green. I cut a fishtail on the left side. I'll adhere the black banner down first and then the green banner on top, just offsetting them slightly. I have 2 more of the large feather images and also the sentiment best wishes. I'll attach the feathers in the lower right-hand corner, just overlapping them slightly. And I've put foam dimension on the back of the Best Wishes sentiment. I'll just add that a little bit to the left of those feathers. I'll cut a small banner from some black cardstock and adhere it in the upper left-hand corner. Then to finish off the card, I decided to pull out the clear crystals again. I'll put 2 of them on the banner in the upper left-hand corner and 3 of them around the sentiment and feather images. For as many times as I've used this sketch, I don't think I've ever added those small banners at the lower portion of the card. I really like how it looks though. And there is my finished card. With the scraps I had left over, I was only able to make 2. I did use different sentiment and image cut-aparts for the second card. Here are all the leftover pattern paper scraps. Just 5 small pieces of the pattern paper, but I still have several of the flowers and sentiment cut-aparts. So I'll hang on to all of those, add them to my scrap box of the year, and hopefully early next year I'll be able to make a few more cards. It'll be nice having some extra sentiments available. Now here's another look at the 20 cards I made using Paper Rose's Birds of a Feather 6x6 paper collection. This is a beautiful collection full of image and sentiment cut-aparts. You know how much I love dies and stamps, but it was really fun to focus on just the pattern paper this time. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Paper Rose is located in Australia and they ship their products internationally, but you can also purchase them here in the US, and I have links for both locations in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.